today seems to be the day of updates. About a year ago, I posted a video about a young girl that was dumped. Her remains were dumped in a dumpster in the Rosedale neighborhood of Toronto. And it took about a year, but finally her remains have been identified. And she's named Neveah Tucker, 4 years old, of Toronto. Her mother, who lives in Toronto, has been identified. There's so much questions going on. Police has not ruled her death a homicide as yet because the autopsy was unable to identify what her cause of death was. So this could have been an accidental unaliving and the perpetrators panicked and dumped her body, or it could have been something that was done on purpose. Police believe that she was unalived sometime in 2021, but her remains were only dumped, in May of 2022. So she's Neveah Tucker. She was born on May 18th of 2017, and her body was found on May 2nd of 2022, just a couple of weeks shy of her 5th birthday. And like I said, there's so many unanswered questions. We're not even sure if she was reported as missing. I don't remember ever seeing, a news article or a report by police to say that she was a missing child. But hopefully there's more updates that will come. But I'm going to include a clip here of the police detective talking about the case. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Like, it's super sad because anytime, harm is done to a child, especially that young, 4 years old, she can't defend herself. And the fact that she could have possibly been harmed by the people that were supposed to be protecting her, it's sad. But yeah, I'll see you guys in another video.
Thank you, Sydney. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. My name is Idsinga, and I'm the inspector in charge of the Toronto Police Services Homicide and Missing Persons Unit. I am joined here today by Renee Foley, who is the Detective Sergeant in charge of 53 Division Criminal Investigations Bureau, and Detective Alexander Wallace, who is the primary investigator of the 53 Division who's been working on this case. On Monday, May 2nd, 2022, Toronto police responded when the remains of a young girl were found in a dumpster on Dale Avenue. She was unidentified, and after a post-mortem examination conducted by Ontario Forensic Pathology Services, her cause of death was undetermined. Investigators from both 53 Division and the Homicide and Missing Persons Unit have been working tirelessly for over a year to identify the little girl. Outstanding missing persons occurrences were reviewed, dozens of tips were investigated, and the process of identification through DNA and genetic genealogy was commenced. The response from the community was tremendous. Thanks to a tip from the community and some great work by investigators in the Center of Forensic Sciences, I can now identify this little girl as Neveah Tucker of Toronto, Neveah. Neveah was born on May 18th, 2017. As previously stated, we believe that Neveah died in 2021. She would have been just shy of her 5th birthday when her body was placed in the dumpster. We have a lot of work to do. We will continue to work closely with our partners to investigate the circumstances leading up to Neveah's death and the subsequent disposal of her body. At this time, no arrests have been made and no charges have been laid. While we are extremely limited in what we can say, I will attempt to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Have you spoken to her parents? Are they considered suspects?
We notified her mother just today, and I won't comment on the status of her mother in our investigation.
Can you just comment on the investigative process? You mentioned that police did look at genetic genealogy, as well as you said you received a tip. Can you just comment on how those things played into the identification?
Yeah, and it's, you know, a lot has come to light in the last few days in regards to all of that. So we're making very good progress with the genetic genealogy, and I've said before, it's a very time-consuming process. It can take years, but I was always confident that it would get us answers. And the intersection of the genetic genealogy and the investigative work that sprung from the tip were on a bit of a collision course. So they've lined up quite nicely with each other, so a lot of work was put into both avenues and came together today to where we are now.
Are you prepared to say that this is a homicide, or is that still undetermined?
Well, the pathologist wasn't able to identify a cause of death, so we're not saying it's a homicide. We'll see where the investigation takes us.
They're still open to potential case of neglect or something else. You said quite poignantly when this case first came to our attention, I guess your attention, that kids don't just die, and
right.
I imagine that's front of mind for investigators.
Absolutely, and it's definitely in our minds that this could still potentially become a homicide case.
Has she been reported missing before?
No.
Two questions. I'm wondering if you elaborate a little bit more on this community tip they received. Who provided that tip? Information.
Well, I'm not going to identify who provided the tip, but the tip itself wasn't specific. Let me say that. It pointed us in a direction, and a lot of work had to be done on that information. It actually did identify somebody else as being the potential victim, but the windfall from that tip ended up taking us in the right direction. So it was a lot of work, and we're very grateful to the person who did call in and provide us with that information. It gave us that little jigsaw puzzle piece, and we were able to build from there.
Thank you. And has there been any related activity or evidence related to dead children in Rosedale in the last year since this investigation started? Is this an isolated incident, or is there any related evidence to activity or personnel?
No, and we don't believe there's any link whatsoever to that specific neighborhood, except for the fact that that's where Neveah's remains ended up.
What happens to the little girl, Inspector, while your team still does their work? I know that your team attended as well, like a memorial for the little girl, and I think people might wonder, like, what happens to her? Does her body get claimed? Do the police take charge of that? Would there be a burial for her?
Well, we have to, as part of our investigation, interview family, different family members, and see if there is a claim to the remains. Whether any social agencies will step up, and will determine what happens with those remains down the road. So hopefully we'll get some answers over the next few weeks to see where that goes.
Are you confident you will be able to determine a cause of death? And it's been a couple of years.
A cause of death? I mean, that's up to the forensic pathologists, right? And it's been a year, and it's been undetermined up until this point, whether some witness information or some forensic examinations of scenes that we uncover will help us out in that. We're optimistic. I don't know that we'll ever get there, though.
Can you talk about the timeline of when that tip came in and the investigative steps that got you to ultimately making that identification?
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite a while. Like I said, the tip kind of took us in another direction, and I'm sorry I can't get too specific about that, but there's certainly some good work by investigators over the last few months to really look at the different aspects of that tip and expand on it, and ultimately bring us to where we are today. So,
Was she born in Toronto?
we believe so.
Is her mom in Toronto?
Yes.
Father?
Sorry?
Father?
Father, we don't know yet. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much for being here.
That concludes our conference for today. Thank you for joining us.